Paul McCauley.
Minister, thank you for being here. The last question dealt with stakeholder engagement, and I suppose this topic touches on it too, and that's the stakeholders, the representative groups that represent taxi drivers. And I know in your constituency, Minister, you will have met many of them, as have I, as have Robert Troy and many others, in regards to the various issues. One issue that has seemed to have come to the fore, mostly because of the government's decision, rightly during COVID, to extend the lifetime of the vehicle of a taxi, is the anomaly whereby if a vehicle was, if the licence was granted before 2009, and the vehicle was associated with that licence from 2013, that licence that vehicle can last for 15 years. And yet we are now asking cars that are older than 10 years to come off the road. So we're actually taking newer cars off the road while remaining while ones that were in place during implementation remain on the road. In regards to wheelchair taxis, we have up to 15 years, and now we have e-vehicles coming on stream as well. And I suppose the question, Minister, is that arbitrary limit of 10 years the right way to approach it as we go forward? And secondly, would a more standards-based approach be appropriate? Because I know you have to unwind the changes to get back to the 10 years over time, and in doing that, that may create further anomalies. It's clear that in cases, whether it was the supply of wheelchair taxis or the supply of e-vehicles, that in both those cases we're battling the supply chain, and so we're trying to adapt a regulatory system that matches that. And so I do feel, Minister, that what we should be looking at is the standard of the car and the standard of the experience for the passenger, rather than an arbitrary age. But specifically on this issue of the anomaly between those cars before 2010 and those newer cars, and secondly the challenge of unwinding the extension of 10 years up until 2024 and beyond. Have you, as Minister, examined that, and how do you propose to address it? And I know much of these consultations are done with the Traffic Advisory Group, and the real difficulty with that, Minister, is that while it purports to be representative of the industry, I think everybody accepts that the process doesn't capture all of the voices within the industry, and certainly several of the representative bodies will not serve on it because of their experience. Now, while the NTA governs many of the issues that I previously dealt with in regards to regulations, the TAC is dealt with by legislation in the department, and again, I think it's time for us to review how we consult with representative bodies in the sector. You know, in some ways, we're a regulatory body for independent private contractors, and so at times it's appropriate to have a kind of arm's length approach. But equally, we know that taxis are a key part of the public transport network, and it is important that we also help them address some of the challenges. And I'm sure you've got the same queries into your office time after time. A lot of the bureaucracy around the application for licences, the grant schemes and how they interact with the applications of licences get in the way of taxi drivers making applications, often require that they're off the road for several weeks, and in many cases prevent them making the decisions that we want them to make, which is to decarbonise the fleet, to have more younger people coming into the industry so it continues to be a vibrant industry. So, Minister, I'd ask you to reflect on some of those issues and how we consult with representative bodies.
Thanks very much, Deputy McAuliffe, for raising this matter here today. And the regulation of the small public service SPSV industry, including enforcement and compliance in the sector, is a matter for the Independent Transport Regulator, the NTA, under the provisions of the Taxi Regulation Acts 2013 and 2016. Neither Minister Ryan or myself have a role in the day-to-day operations of the SPSV sector. The NTA as regulator sets the standards and requirements for the SPSV sector, which includes rules about vehicle standards, suitability of drivers and insurance requirements. The NTA also enforces legislation which includes taxis, hackneys and limousines. Regulations made in 2010 first established a maximum permissible age of 10 years for new standard taxis and hackneys. The 10-year rule was adopted in recognition of the need to strike a balance between achieving standards that offer the customer confidence, comfort and safety and allowing industry members to operate successfully. It's worth noting that the Irish 10-year rule for the standard taxis and hackneys is not particularly onerous when you compare it to other jurisdictions. Wheelchair accessible taxis and hackneys are permitted to operate up to 15 years of age. No maximum permissible age is prescribed for limousines in recognition of both the vintage nature of many of these vehicles and their generally reduced mileage. The situation to which the Deputy refers relates to Regulation 31(2) of the Taxi Regulation of 2015, whereby standard non-wheelchair accessible taxis and hackney licences granted before the 1st of January 2009 had the same vehicle associated with that licence on the 1st of January 2013. The vehicle can be licensed up to the 15th anniversary of the date of its first registration. As a result of the emergency regulations introduced during the COVID pandemic and updated more recently in November of last year, 386 of these vehicles remain in the SPSV fleet. Therefore, they remain eligible to continue to be licensed by virtue of the time-bound regulations. During the pandemic, standard age limits for taxis and hackneys were extended on several occasions and are currently extended through to the end of 2024. This change helped to ensure that no operator exited the industry based on the age of a vehicle because a replacement vehicle could not be purchased in the prevailing exceptional circumstances. All eligible vehicles were required to successfully complete both a roadworthiness and SPSV suitability inspection every 6 months to ensure standards and quality remain at an appropriate level. The 22 regulations provide for a graduated return to the 10-year age limit, with vehicles whose age limit was originally in 20 or 21 now extended to 2025. Those whose original limit is in 22 or 23 now extended to 26, and those original limited will be reached in 24, now extended to 2027. The NTA introduced these exceptional contingency regulations to provide assurance to licence holders and to further extend the dates of expiring vehicle licence, as in the NTA's view the capability of taxi and hackney licence holders to secure new vehicles was affected by international developments during 2022, with lead times of 1 year not being uncommon. There are a few factors facing holders to replace end-of-life vehicles, resulting in a very constrained and limited supply of new and used vehicles for purchase, including an unpredicted continuation of the global shortage of semiconductor chips and palladium, which is affected by the war in Ukraine, energy rationing in Europe, and supply to Ireland as Europe's largest right-hand drive market for auto manufacturers. The UK is more attractive for new car sales. A pragmatic response is required to control the impacts of matters outside of the state's control. Therefore, that is why the NTA made these temporary exceptional contingency regulations in relation to the maximum permissible vehicle age limits of vehicles due to reach their end of life before 2025. And I suppose at the current period there is a degree of certainty now for many licence holders out to the end of 24 and beyond.
Well, thank you, Minister, and I welcome your clarification that the anomaly does exist, that those cars under Section 31(2) will be older, and yet we will be asking newer cars to come off the road. It is an anomaly, and it's a very significant purchase for many taxi drivers. But look, can I say, you finished your contribution by saying that it was done for the uncertainty that existed in the market. There's always going to be uncertainty around supply, and there's always going to be uncertainty around the delivery of new vehicles. And as we move into an era where e-cars are available, I'm not certain whether forcing people to change their car more frequently when perhaps components of the car might need to be changed is the best environmental approach either. But I'll ask you to reflect on that and maybe raise it with the NTA specifically, Minister. Can I say, as the broader point I raise in regards to the interaction which we have with the industry, I would ask that you might consider how we might better interact with the industry, and that might start initially with some exploratory meetings with those representative bodies. And I know you're always willing to meet people, and I hope that we could maybe start a conversation with them about how we can better engage them. And like one example that they've been really frustrated in raising is the whole issue of transferability, so that when somebody passes away, they're able to transfer their licence to another family member or to a third party. But if somebody is sick for a very long period of time or incapacitated, they're not able to to do that. And then they're forced to license it out or to lease it out, and the person who's often caring for that sick person ends up also being involved in all of these business transactions that they don't want to be involved in at all. I think there's lots of different small issues that frustrate many people in the industry and discourage people from entering it. And as I say, Mr. I believe taxis are a key part of the public transport network, and I'd ask you to do everything that you can to try and work with the stakeholders to see how customers and taxi drivers can get a better deal.
Tara, to conclude.
Thanks very much, and I appreciate the I suppose the points you've made on engagement, and we have in the last number of weeks alone have met with some taxi drivers, as we've discussed ourselves, and I'm happy to engage directly with others.